Hello and welcome to your preview of Training to Go modules presented by Technical Sales and Consulting. At the end of the preview, we will provide how to access more information about our training products. Thanks for visiting, and we hope you enjoy the preview. The new NEC Code 70E for 2024 has clarified conditions for complex lockout-tagout. Let's go over these. Multiple energy sources. Technicians need to be aware of multiple energy sources. With the increased use of generators, alternative power systems, and backup systems, there is a need for additional care. In addition, verifying multiple methods of disconnecting an electrical source can catch alternate or undocumented feed. Multiple crews. Considering the potential for heightened safety concerns when crews are working out of sight of one another. Multiple crafts. If there are other trades such as HVAC or plumbers on the site simultaneously, it is necessary to protect all involved. Multiple locations. Crews may be working in more than one location out of sight from one another. Multiple employers. Sometimes there are different departments involved, and the written documentation aids as an overall communication device. Multiple disconnecting means. These can be mechanical or electrical sources. Particular sequences. If the equipment requires a specific operating procedure, this must be documented. A job or task that continues for more than one work period. It is necessary to inform all personnel when the work extends beyond one shift or multiple days. It is pretty safe to say that any condition using the term multiple in lockout-tagout situation will turn the process under the guidelines of complex LOTO. Next, we will reference in detail the requirements for the necessary documentation for complex LOTO. NFPA 70E 2024 requires a written plan if the lockout-tagout is of complex form of control. The threshold for a complex lockout-tagout designation is relatively low. If any one of the conditions for a complex lockout-tagout are met, the procedural rules are expanded to include a documentation requirement. This requirement helps to ensure that the planning process takes as many potential hazards as possible into account before work begins and provides a safety framework for all the facets of the lockout-tagout process. There are many components required for this paperwork. Every complex lockout-tagout requires specific actions which we will outline in the following slide. It is necessary to create a written plan of execution that identifies the qualified and authorized person in charge and clearly identifies when and where the lockout-tagout apply. Templates to develop a written plan are available from many online websites. First, you must account for all personnel participating in the lockout-tagout, indicate their names and their functions. The next step is to account for all personnel participating in the lockout-tagout. Indicate their names and functions. Next up is to identify the elements of control. This includes electrical lockout devices, lockout tags, lockout padlocks, lockout signs, and mechanical lockout devices. The next step is to establish a qualified person for doing the switching and the method of de-energizing the sources. This person should be knowledgeable of the entire operation. Continuing with the plan, you need to account for all types of energy present, such as steam, hydraulic, stored electrical energy, compressed air, or any other electrical form of energy. You need to consider and identify the means to verify that the circuit is open and de-energized. This could mean checking to see if a breaker is open or closed, or testing for power with a multimeter. Moving on, you need to identify the qualified person that is verifying the correct implementation of the Lockout-Tagout process. Post this person's name to make sure everyone knows the responsible person. Continuing with the plan, you need to establish a step for confirmation that the equipment cannot be restarted. This includes describing the device and tag used to make sure the system cannot be started. Next up, you need to identify the proper test equipment to be utilized, the PPE required, and the requirement to test before touch, preferably using the live-dead-live method. This also includes indicating the name and functionality of the test equipment and what type of PPE is required. Grounding is an important consideration when it comes to Lockout-Tagout. In the plan, you need to identify what, if any, grounding requirements need to be met. Grounding needs to be covered elsewhere on the other job safety documentation pertaining to the work involved. When more than one shift will occur during the Lockout-Tagout process, you need to establish the procedure to transfer the responsibility of the Lockout-Tagout in the event that it extends past one shift. Next up, you need to establish how tasks at remote locations or related jobs will be coordinated. Pinpoint all locations in the facility that will be affected. Continuing with the plan, you need to establish procedures for removing the Lockout-Tagout devices when and if the original installer is not available. Explain in detail the devices, keys, and personnel that will carry out this function. Next up, you need to establish procedures for returning the equipment to service. This includes testing and the verification method that will be followed. Lastly, you need to establish procedures for temporary release for testing. These procedures can be identical to the return to service step. As you can see, the extensive written requirements are well beyond the scope of an average job safety analysis or job hazard analysis form used by most companies. It is quite common to have a separate Lockout-Tagout documentation so that all parameters can be covered. Developing a procedure for considering as many of the potential hazards as possible and the accompanying written plan has increased awareness among all employees exposed to electrical hazards, especially since there is the ability to inform all parties of these hazards. The 2024 NFPA 70E provides sample guidelines including Lockout-Tagout to assist in the development and refinement of an overall electrical safety program. Again, many websites offer templates for writing an effective complex Lockout-Tagout plan. This additional required paperwork has the potential to be a great safeguard to all workers exposed to electrical hazard. It also provides a good tool for companies to enhance and improve processes and procedures when work is performed in facilities. Hi. We hope you enjoyed a sample video of our online e-learning module. This clip is from one of our many available modules. We're always working on new modules, but here is the current list of developed lessons. Outlines, pricing, previews, and requests for information are available at trainingtogo.net. Let our Training to Go programs train your people while you run your business.